Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our third and final New Americans in Our Economy event, educational series brought to you by the Columbus Chamber Foundation and with the generous support of NiSource Foundation and Columbia Gas of Ohio. Today, we're going to hear from Tariq, Tara, and Frank, representing Jewish Family Services, CRIS, and NiSource Bergen. And in just a second, I'm going to have them introduce themselves very quickly and just a little bit about their role in their respective organizations. And then Tariq is going to share a video to help those who are new to this conversation have a better understanding of when we talk about refugees in Columbus, who we're talking about, where they're coming from, and some of the opportunities that lie within that very vibrant talent pipeline. So I'll start with you, Tariq, and then Frank.
Kelly, you'll start with me, you said?
Go ahead. Tara. Yeah. Go ahead, Tariq.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. And my name is Tariq Mohammed. I manage the Refugee Employment Program for Jewish Family Services. And I'm very excited today to share with you some of the findings and some of the best ways to find and employ and retain refugees in Central Ohio and all the benefits that comes with engaging this vibrant and untapped community.
Thank you. Tara.
Good morning. My name is Tara Dungana. I work for Community Refugee and Immigration Services. I oversee the workforce development program there. Happy to be here today. Thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, Frank.
Good morning, everyone. Frank DeCenzo. I am the Director of Operations for the Columbus, Ohio Distribution Center. NiSource Bergen is a pharmaceutical distribution company, Fortune 8 and the Fortune 500 with roughly 41,000 employees. And I'm excited to be on this call today as well, and then sharing my experiences working with this team in supporting the refugee and immigrant community.
Thank you, Frank. Tariq, would you share with us, all of us on the call, a little bit about the community itself and the experience here in Columbus of our refugee neighbors and friends?
Absolutely, and I'll share the presentation in a second just to catch up everyone. So the past couple of times, or past two presentations that we've done, we really dove into what is a refugee and how do refugees come to the United States, and what does the working with refugees look like, and what is Jewish Family Services and Community Refugee Immigration Services' role is to engage and help you build your workforce and how to find refugees. So with that, I'd like to just jump in and catch everyone that may not have been on those two calls, just to give you a little bit of perspective of that, and then we can move on to the next part of it. Let's see. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect, and I'll just go. Don't mind me, guys. I do Keynote usually, so this is. Do you guys still see the full screen? Perfect. So again, just wanted to share with you quickly, we'll just talk about these three main topics at the moment, just to what makes somebody a refugee and the refugee journey, and also the United States policy on that. There's a lot of terms that are being used quite extensively here: immigrant, refugee, and what is the difference? Well, the stark difference really is, if you didn't know before, a refugee is someone that has been persecuted because of their race and ethnicity and so forth. And an immigrant is somebody who comes to the United States, migrates for an economic reason. So there's a big difference between the two. At the end of the day, when they come to the United States, yes, everybody is a foreign born or born somewhere else and came to America. But the idea of how one gets to the United States, it's a huge difference of that. And the United States policy dictates, based on somebody's claims, dictates who's a refugee and who's not. So this is the 5 pillars for the reason why one could apply for a refugee status. And that's if you've been persecuted because of your race, religion, excuse me, and your political opinion, and if you belong to a membership of some sort of a group, then if you're persecuted because of that, you could definitely apply for a refugee. Just to give you a perspective of how many refugees are around the world, it's the highest since World War II. It's 80 million plus people are fleeing from their home because of violence and persecution. And again, there's also if somebody crosses the border outside of their country, then they become an officially refugee. But if you're inside of your country, still haven't left yet, you're displaced persons. And there's about 40 million people are still living within their country, but have not gone outside of their country. And just to give you also an understanding, 47% of that, those people that I've mentioned are women, and 51% of that are children. So women and children always suffer the most in wars and destructions. So most people don't know this, but most people think America or Europe brings the most refugees around the world. This is what we talked about last time. Turkey, Lebanon, Pakistan, Iran, and Jordan make up the largest number of people hosting refugees. And someone like Tara Dungana, who is a dear friend and a partner who's with us today, have lived in a refugee camp for the past 20 years. And for you to get an understanding of what refugee camp looks like, to live in 20 years, this is the conditions in which you will see. Conditions that are hopeless. People are making their own, heat. People living in tents in such weathers that is -20. In these conditions for 20 years, people have lived like this. And again, women and children suffer the most. Like I said, once someone is in refugee camp, they live in refugee camp on an average for 20 years, which is the highest and the longest time ever since. I'll jump quickly to the resettlement program. So you wonder, okay, all of that, we understand. Wars happen, people live in refugee camps, they run away from violence. So how do they get to the United States? Well, luckily, the United States is one of the countries that belong to the Geneva Convention, which says we will protect refugees and we will have something called the resettlement program. So just quickly here, the 3 pillars that protects refugees is, one, when they flee from their country, one is they could be repatriated. So in other words, they could go back to their country once the country, gets politically stable. 2, they could be integrated to the local community in the refugee camp. So if they fled from Somalia to Kenya and Kenya can absorb the people, that's one option. 3rd, and the least likely option, is the resettlement. So coming to these countries that you see here have the most robust resettlement program. The United States and Canada are the top tiers of welcoming people, especially the United States. Before 2016 and beyond, US was very friendly to refugees. The process of refugees, and honestly, it's very complicated and very long for us to actually recap to talk about this, but essentially, you apply for refugee status, you wait, and you wait some more, and then you get to be questioned about your refugee claims, and then you get to be, again, questioned and then fingerprinted, retina, eye, blood work, you name it. It's about 20-year process for someone to get through to come to the United States. It is not we're letting everybody in. It doesn't work. I came in the mid 90s or late 90s, and this system was exactly the same. Tara came in 2018 or 19. Oh no, I'm sorry, 2009, and the process was still the same. And today it's still the same. So there's nobody that comes in. This is the three major thing that refugees go through. First, security, to make sure everybody is who they are before they come to our country here in the United States. And then there's the RMP process, which is the resettlement, which is finding you and taking care of you for 90 days. And then the part that Tara does is the middle, and the part that I do and Tara does as well is the final stage of helping the refugees get stabilized, ESOL, and move on to become a self-sufficient human being. Just to also give you perspective for those who don't know, this photo in the bottom I took recently, and the top part is your ancestors. This is Addis Island. So look at the stark similarities. There's no differences. People fled from wars, people fled from time, and they came, they bettered their lives, and they moved on. And the photo here, this is our Addis Island, Columbus, Ohio. When people arrive, they're still huddled, they're still holding each other, they're still scared, they don't know what's gonna happen to them. Therefore, we come in and we make sure that they can live their dreams and not fall behind. So if you haven't been to an airport where people are welcoming each other for the first time for 5 years, 20 years, 15 years, it's such an emotional piece for me when I welcome refugees. Sister and brother have not seen because of the travel ban. This is exactly what emotionally people go through. She welcomes her brother, and she's so excited to see him and very emotional. This is a family that Angie fought for. Angie is the executive director for Community Refugee Immigration Services, a dear friend and Tara's boss. And this is the family that she welcomes to the United States. So after 3.5 years, 4 years, or up to 5 years, refugees, 99% of the time, love to give back to the United States and become a US citizen. And there's a lot of things we'll discuss at the end of our conversation, but again, and our contact information, and I'm sure Hope and Kelly will share that with you. And I will exit. I'm trying to exit. Let's see.
Tariq, thank you for bringing that conversation to a level set for those who haven't been with us for the previous two. I want to jump right in, if I may, with talking about the refugee community as kind of this untapped talent pipeline. And Frank, I'll start with you. How did you get involved with Tara and Tariq and the work they're doing on behalf of our refugee community in Columbus?
Yes, thank you. Initially, I've been a member with the Chamber for quite a few years, and that's my initial contact. So I would recommend that's who you start with initially, and then that's how it cascaded out to Tara and Tariq. But additionally, working with Tariq quite a few years ago, he placed 2 associates at the leadership level within our building, and Vlad Razin being our computer operations manager. So we had that established relationship. But it's really all about networking. We belong to REAM, which is a local employee assistance network, and it's getting into the communities and understanding the population of the refugees and immigrants that are available.
Great. And Tariq and Tara, kind of in that same vein, you know, how are you making outreach and connections to organizations like AmeriSource Bergen and to individuals like Frank?
Oh, you want to go? Or happy to.
You can go. I can.
So before we started this conversation, I was talking about I was talking to Kelly and Hope and everybody else about the networking. So I come from a culture, and I'm sure Tara is the same way. Networking is all about, in American context, it's a deliberate, and why are we networking is to benefit one another. So there's no, I don't want to call the word shame, but there's nothing about it. In the cultures that Tara and I come from, networking has to happen on a very natural way. We either work together, we either, relatives, we either belong to the same, mosque and temple and so forth and worship places. But in American context, there's networking. There is the reason why you're there, to make sure you get to know people. The flip side to that is when refugees come here, they cannot talk to someone like Frank because they're not going to meet him. They don't know what is networking. They don't have a cousin who lived here for 20 years that worked for AmeriSource, although that's happening soon. But there's not a whole lot of that. So our job, Tara and I, literally is we are that networking for the community, is making sure that they can go out and represent their case on their own in the future. But for now, we will help them connect with you and make sure that that relationship is built.
Tara, what are your thoughts on that?
It's same, but I would like to add that the communities we serve are also so neatly tied, like Trig mentioned earlier. They go to mosques or temple or congregate in different ways. So that side of networking is it's word of mouth, right? For example, taking the opportunity of having Frank here from AmeriSource. Once we met with Frank, Tariq and I came back and started hearing about the job possibility at AmeriSource Bergen. And once we talked to a few people, now it has reached out to the community, in the broader community. Most every community is from refugee and immigrants in Central Ohio. And now we have people coming from the community help me find a job at AmeriSource. They are not, our approach is like, these are the jobs. We help you make best decision which job you want to pick, but at the end of the day, it's your decision, right? But here now, with this networking, they come asking like, help me place at AmeriSource, right? So just like to highlight that, and we do attend the employers group meeting like REAM, like Frank mentioned earlier, and some other networking opportunities. And I'll tell this, Chamber has given such a boost for us also.
Good. Yeah, we're very grateful for the partnership and the relationship that we've established with all of your organizations. Frank, I've been out to visit your site at AmeriSource Bergen, and some things that you do and your organization does to welcome a more diverse and inclusive workforce. Share a little bit about that, because I was super impressed with a lot of the things I saw, like flags from all the nations represented in your workforce. Talk a little bit about the history of AmeriSource Bergen's approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. From a corporate perspective, we have launched an enterprise-wide D&I council, and that is led by our executive vice president, as well as our chief D&I officer. And we've implemented a lot of different programs, but one that's really important that we've created is an employee-led council with multi-language. And when we bring in individuals, whether they're refugees, immigrant, whatever language, we're able to tap into those resources to provide support. My situation here at the distribution center is a little unique in that we employ 180 associates, and 41% of those associates are foreign born, which is a pretty high percentage, at least I feel that way. But to retain the associates, we do something on a monthly basis, recognizing D&I, where we bring in food, associates bring in food from their native country for everyone that tries something different. We do have representation in the building from 25 different countries, and I wish I would have taken a photo of the flags and had it like in my background versus just my office blinds. But not only that, but we've also implemented prayer rooms in the facility for associates to have that privacy, as well as rooms for nursing mothers.
That's amazing. And, what great work that you and your team are doing to be, intentional about retaining your employees. Tariq and Tara, how important are those measures that Frank just described, the prayer rooms and, seeing a flag from your home country, and being connected to, women's issues, mothers' issues around, finding space for privacy for nursing. What do you hear from the community that you represent?
I'll tell you this. The retention starts day one when people walk into your door as an employer, like what Frank just mentioned. When they see that there is something they belong to, means like, oh, this is a place I can belong to. It's a welcoming place. They care about me. They care about my values, right? I believe in. So I would say it starts there. Yes, it is beyond 90 days and all, but the first impression, all of you know, you do interviews with different new hires, and I don't have to preach the choir here that the first impression, right? So it's very impressive for me and Tariq too, because we represent these communities, this culture. I come from one culture, but I represent various different cultures from my job. So when we watch employer side and to see that there is that establishment already, that endeavor by the employer, that's like, oh, we want to work very closely here, right? So the thing starts there.
Yeah, I definitely, I'll echo what Tara said, but I also would add that in America, I feel like there is identity and there is work, and those two relationships in respect to your career and your identity, self-identity, could either be the same or it could be different. But for refugees and foreign-born individuals, the way your religion or your culture is, it's you wearing it all the time, and you are that person. And when somebody values that, you would work not only hard, but you would work harder than you would otherwise. In other words, you will, if you show me that respect and you show me that my culture matters, I will give you 100%. And it's a human nature. It's not just for refugees. I don't know if any of the audience here have traveled, but once you see something that reminds you of home, if you're in the middle of Africa, if you're in the middle of Europe, something that reminds you about Ohio State or Buckeye or something, you would always gravitate to that, and you'll say, wow, this place must be really cool. I need to visit that place. It is the same concept, and I think that's what Frank has successfully implemented in their company.
Yeah.
Kelly, I would just like to add that it's more than just recruiting. It's partnering with Tara and Tariq at the stage that we are now in our relationship. Just like yesterday, we're talking about more of strategy, our go forward strategy, right? So, how do we continue to build upon the relationship and look at other programs to make everyone successful? As Tara mentioned earlier, we have, because of the relationships that we're building and the associates have been very successful. Now, it's about word of mouth now in their communities, because we have different refugees and immigrants coming in directly. And as they come in for the open interview, they identify who they know and they refer them to come to AmeriSource.
Very good. And I want to kind of pick up on that thread there a little bit, if I may. You know, in any relationship, communication is critical for it to be a healthy, you know, continuing relationship. Talk about how the communication begins and what that looks like from AmeriSource Bergen to CRIS to Jewish Family Services to the job seeker. Like, how often are you communicating and what kind of system have you built?
Yeah, so we engage daily with all the associates in the building, irregardless of race, culture. However, it is challenging with the different languages. As I mentioned earlier, I'm somewhat in a different position because I have leaders that were refugees and immigrants and so forth on both shifts. But what we do is we partner these associates with others in the building that can speak their language. And then they're also what we call their mentor, and they train with those individuals for several weeks. A lot of challenges, but one thing that I would recommend to anyone that's looking to move into this arena is to communicate with your leadership team before you start on this path, just to make sure they understand the culture. Directionally, how do we communicate with these associates? I know personally something that I started to do, because we have so many different languages in the building, that I'm just going out and learning certain phrases such as, you know, good morning or how are you? And when you're walking the plant, just to stop and say that, you know, in their language goes a long way. They're smiling. So it's another recommendation.
Yeah, that's a great one. Tara and Tariq, that same question, you know, developing this communication cadence with the business community, like Frank, you know, talk a little bit about that from your own perspectives.
Sure. Tariq, if you let me do it, I'll make it very quick my thoughts. I think there is a common ground or a common point for the employers and us as a social service provider, workforce related. The common ground is retention, right? People retaining the job. So as much as every employer wants their employee be successful, so much Tariq and I want all our referrals be successful in the work and grow there, right? It's not simply retaining the upward mobility in the job. And Frank is a leader. He has already given that opportunity, and like you mentioned already, and why that's important, because anytime we have our referrals and they go there, they see somebody like them who are in a leadership role now, right? That gives another I think the belonging, like, oh, there is somebody who looks like me, is a leader here. So meaning like I can also be there, right? There is that possibility for me too. So that draws the initial attention also. Another thing about the communication is, yes, communication is very, very critical for everyone to be successful, right? And even if folks speak English at the level they can function on their own, there are those cultural components that comes in within the language, meaning like, and it has happened, group of people from the same community, same language, work in a workplace, right? In a particular workplace. And the employer or the supervisor or the leader has to talk to one individual with either a performance issue or anything relevant or related. Then everybody from this group comes to the, to approach that, right? Which is not an American way of doing things. And what do you do then? You call us, we come and help navigate through that process, right? Again, having the opportunity of Frank here, he texts us, just forget about that email, call, formal conversation. We text each other, we communicate like friends, And that helps overcome those barriers before it comes to the point of separation, right, of an associate. So this conversation between employers and us as a social service provider is as critically important as the language at the workplace for these associates we refer.
Kelly, could I add 30-second something else? So there's a piece also that is crucial. Today's world, everything has moved online. Application process, all your recruiting material, all your onboarding, everything is by at least some sort of a online presence. And the challenge with that is, there's a huge digital divide. It's not just new Americans or refugees, it's poverty in general. People have no access to that way of coming to you anymore. So what our programs and our trainings do to individuals is at least we'll have a computer area or some sort of a person that could assist them with that application. Also, the process, if your process is particularly very long and it takes a very long time to person to be onboarded for whatever reason, that also we've learned that it doesn't work, because people that Tara and I represent, they apply today, they literally want to work. And that's not just refugees, it's most human beings. They want to get started as quickly as possible. So we communicate between the policies that one company has and how to get on, onto their application process into that. And we also update you on where they are in the process as well, in terms of why they didn't fill the application on the background and so forth and so on. So there's back and forth quite a bit. And it's not just Tara and I sitting in a computer communicate all day. We have staff and we have multilingual, 14 different languages are spoken. And it is such a wonderful process, because without you reaching to a nonprofit refugee-based organization, it's very hard to access all those knowledge and languages.
Thank you all for that. I think, that's a really important key here that we want to share with everyone who's on the call today, is that it's not just about finding talent and hiring from the refugee community, but Tara, Tariq, and their agencies will stand alongside when needed, to continue, because retention is the goal. We want to hire people, but we certainly want them to be retained in those roles and provided that upward mobility as well. Frank, I'm going to ask you just a real direct question. In the last couple months, how many people have you hired as a result of these connections with Tara and Tariq?
Yeah, absolutely. I would estimate approximately 18 to 20 associates.
That's awesome. Awesome.
And those associates are still with us. However, I will say, just to go back to the prior question, Kelly, is that I have only been successful in pursuing this avenue or path to work with the refugee and immigrant communities because of NiSource and the support that I get from the leadership team, from our executive team, right? With starting a company-wide D&I council, a stream focus on people, culture, and getting involved in the community.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, I want to kind of back up a little bit as well, because a few minutes ago, we were talking about the importance of preparing your internal team, when you're bringing in, maybe people from other cultures, other countries. And what are some of the things that you've been able to do, Frank, to kind of help prepare that for maybe those frontline managers and supervisors?
Yes, absolutely, because that is a challenge with the language barrier in some cases. However, I think it's important that your frontline leaders understand the culture and the culture that we're driving towards in relation to D&I, and it's just helping them be patient. Obviously, all of us have specific ramp-up period as to when you bring on a new hire, but you have to understand that's going to take a little bit longer, and you have to be patient and continue to work with those individuals and not just say, well, I'm going to step away because I don't think I can help that individual. And we have reached out to Tara and Tariq when we needed some support with translation and things like that.
Very good. Tara, Tariq, any thoughts on that helping to prepare, businesses with their frontline workers, their frontline supervisors to make it a more inclusive workforce for our refugee community?
Tara, if you don't mind, I could say a couple of words here. I think one of the system we have always implemented and continue to enforce it today is to meet. Tara and I essentially will meet with your HR team and your leadership team, and then we will really do a mini session of this sort of similarities here. We'll share with you the numbers of refugees coming in, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and what are the return of investment of really engaging with this community, with your business. And after that, we'll just come in and do a quick tour, because we want to, at the end of the day, we have fiduciary responsibility to the individuals. This is a taxpayer-funded program. Therefore, we are responsible in some sense for their safety at workplace, not in, at least for us to see ourselves, what kind of place they're going to be working in. So we'll do a tour for two reasons. One, to see the place, and also to understand, could a person from a different country with gaps in the education, could they do this particular task? Is it a heavily computer or a technology phase, or is it a common sense of you can learn it quickly and you can pick it up, whether you speak, Somali or French or whatever, right? So we'll build that relationship, and then slowly we don't like to start with 20 people all at once, because your previous staff that are there to train 20 people all at once, it depends on the job, of course. It will take a little bit of challenging time. So we would like to go in a smaller space and get you at least a 5 to start with, or 3 or 4, and then also select from the leaders within the community as well for some sort of role for them to be the cultural negotiator on both places. And I think Frank alluded to that, is to get somebody on a much linguistically both cultures understands that. So I think our model is really, it's a successful model because we ourselves, both of us, Tara and I, have learned this language that we speak to you today. We weren't born speaking English, and we came to this country as refugees as well. So it took us as long and as hard for us to be before you today to really share these things that we've learned for the past 20 years or plus. So yeah, I mean, it's a process, but it's a process that really the return on investment is very, very, very solid, and it would pay off itself.
Kelly, I would add to that, that we just didn't jump into it, right? We took a tiered approach. I've had Tariq and Tara to our facility multiple times. I also had executives come in to the site to meet with both Tariq and Tara to not only see if we could continue to enhance the relationship here in Columbus, but in other states, utilizing their services. In addition to that, Tariq has also partnered with our corporate marketing and communications team, and we're working on literature that we will be putting in different languages and so forth, which will help with that recruiting process.
I would also add that language, yes, it is a barrier, right? It's a fear. It's an elephant in the room always, and it's same for these associates too. For right, it's as much as you as an employer has that fear, I guess. Same with the associates we refer to, like, how do I communicate right? How do I talk to my supervisor or my team lead, right? So here is the thing, two things. As long as Tariq and I have been doing this for 10, 12, Tariq has done over 20 years now, it's a proven fact that people pick up the language quicker in the workplace than in any classroom kind of setting and teaching environment. We do offer ESOL and language training at our site, right? But we see that the learning curve of the language is pretty steep at the workplace than at our site. Okay, so what does that mean is for you as an employer, there is that drive behind in every individual that I have to learn the language English to be successful personally myself, to make my life easier personally, right? And then comes safety and all of that. And especially with refugees and immigrants, they are put in a pathway towards naturalization. Okay, Tariq mentioned that early on in the presentation. So that naturalization does not happen in Nepali language, does not happen in Arabic language or a Somali language. There is only one language. Everybody has to take the test, the naturalization test. That's in English, right? And everybody so far we resettled or we have come through wants to be a citizen as sooner as possible. If that timeline was 2 years that you become naturalized, people will do it. Okay, but to do that, you have to learn the language. Okay, so that starts day one when family arrived to the country. Like, I have to learn the language. They were coached in that way too, prior departing from the refugee camp. Like, language is critical. As much as you can do it personally, get the resources, put priority in securing language or learning the language. So, and we as a provider also have done with multiple other employers, especially with big employers, because it's the cost involved in that. We can come to your site, develop a curriculum that fits the custom fits the language need of your workplace, and then provide those language training at the site. Okay, it does involve the employer investment there, but we will say that's a long-term ROI, I guess, that gives you a good ROI investment, and it does give people the feeling of like we mentioned earlier, belonging, right? I belong here. So we would encourage you to look into that also.
That sounds like a great solution. So what it sounds like you're saying, Tara, is a business could work with you or Tariq and develop something maybe even on site, but it's contextualized. I mean, we're talking about words and phrases and things that are important to do the job that they're doing.
Absolutely. And every workplace is different, right? If let's say like logistics, every employer is different. The way they do the business is different. Their operation system is different. So there is that language particular to a workplace, individual workplace, and this program helps you support that.
So if a business that's on today wanted to do something like that, how would they get that started?
Just let us know that you are interested in launching that program at your site.
It really is. Sorry, Frank, go ahead.
Kelly, I just wanted to add for the group that it's not just about ESL as well. So we want to make sure that these associates also have the ability to grow with career development. So AmerisourceBergen has funded us at the local level. And pre-pandemic, we partnered with Columbus State, and once a month we would offer different type of courses, not only ESL, but something that we may find very simple, such as internet navigation, right? Excel, WordPerfect, just to help them continue to build their careers so they can advance.
Yeah.
I was gonna, yes, exactly what Frank's point is, and I was gonna just add that to it is the, if you join a firm or if you join a company today, It will take you a little while, even though you're an educated person, you've worked elsewhere. It'll take you a little while to get used to that cultural clues within the job itself. There's certain phrases or certain things that the company or your place of employment will use. Magnify that to the linguistic challenges to that is, and I think what Tara eloquently said is exactly that, is we are going to, it's not just a referral process, it is a language of the workplace. It's you, the person who is English not their first language, is to learn this as quickly as possible. But first, it requires a deeper partnership of really distilling down what are those 100 to 200 words that are often spoken, or 300 words, and those we will take back into our training facilities and so forth, or train them while they're there. So it's a comprehensive way of looking at longevity of not only recruiting and cultural competency, but also a long-term retention and growth within the organization, and also and you're integrating people to the United States. This is, and Tara eloquently absolutely said that it's part of becoming a U.S. citizen. It's part of taking this country as your home. If your place of work is healthy and you're making living and you belong to this country. So it's a win-win for not only your company itself, but the community at large.
Absolutely. And I love, excuse me, I love this intentionality around upskilling and training, to your point, Frank, not just for things that are going to make you, a better producer, on your job, but things that just help round out an individual's overall education. I think that's amazing and wonderful that you guys are investing in your people.
And then it has happened, the sharing that, like for employers, when you have to consider everybody, right? Like people who are born here don't need that language help. So how to just not set up or like preferential treatment kind of thing. But I would say employee enrichment is a program every employer have in their hands as a tool, right? And it's just that. It's employee enrichment program, and it's slightly different for this particular community. But if you take that approach of employee enrichment program, it just fits in right there.
Right. So I'd be remiss if I didn't address, some of the barriers that not just apply to our refugee community, but to workforce in general. We know transportation can often be, just a non-starter, for someone. They can't get to work. They can't keep coming to work because of lack of reliable transportation options. Tara and Tariq, how are your organizations addressing that and helping the job seeker and the business community?
I'm going to have Tara explain the little details, but I just wanted to give you a perspective. Japan, most of Africa, Mexico, almost everywhere on the planet, companies, larger companies, really invest in transporting their staff or their people from the location where they live into that. Obviously, those countries may not have the independence of mobility as we have in the United States, but also it really reduces a lot of tardiness. My car broke down, I can't make it today for whatever reason. It really reduces all of that. And it is a win-win for those companies who we partnered with to solve that one piece of the puzzle in retention and recruiting. So Tara, I'll let you take it from there. I just wanted to give a perspective of what that looks like from elsewhere other than the United States.
Sure. Thank you, Tariq, for laying that foundation. Here is, and this is most recent. Before I get to that level, again, transportation is a barrier, regardless whether you are born here or you are arriving as a refugee to the country the first day. And unless there is a program set up, it's very, very difficult to get that mobility, right? People moving from one part of the city to the another part of the city for job. And job is one thing. For us as a provider, there are many other services we provide where transportation is required, right? Like hospital systems and things like that. So here is the thing. The approach Tariq and I had from the very beginning is find a driver and encourage that driver from the community, drive another 4-5 non-drivers together and go to work. Two things. One is they drive together, so they are community, right? They enjoy the time driving. Safety too. The driver won't fall asleep and just come into any kind of untoward situation, right? The other thing is gas sharing and all that. These are all good things, but there is a flip side to that too, because you are putting up your client into a situation like if anything is to happen, the driver is to meet an accident, then you are putting the risks of that many lives into one hand, one thing. Another thing is just Tariq mentioned, like 5 people cannot be to the work, right? Because of this unfortunate situation that happened. And it has happened. So for us, Tariq and me, we were always exploring about where are those dots and how can we connect those dots to make everyone's life easier. And I had the opportunity to meet with this company that provides transportation or private transportation company right before pandemic. And the reason they approached us is like they needed drivers, right? They did not have enough drivers to drive their shuttles. So they reached out to us like, can you please help us recruit drivers like every other employer is needing people? And I'm like, okay, yes, we can, but their requirement is, and it's understandable that the driver has to have 5 years of clean driving history, right? And for our clients who are new drivers to have that 5 years of clean driving history takes a while. Even if you have started driving, there are so many things you breezed on your way. Maybe you passed a light, or maybe you just drove in a one-way street the wrong direction, right? So all that will stay in your background for some time. So to have that 5 years clean driving history will take a while. So here is the thing. I'm like, okay, that's good, but maybe there is another business opportunity here with us. How about this? Would you be willing to work with us and provide transportation to work, right? We will introduce you or your program to the employer partners we work with, and you work with them. And we have people here, right? So connecting the dots, employment, employer here, transportation company there, we here with the people. Now we connected this dot and how people just go to work. So that's the approach we have taken recently and been pretty successful. We have at least 5 or 7 employers now have started working with this transportation company, committed people to work.
That's awesome, because we know, those of us, that are in the workforce space and employing people, that transportation has traditionally been a real significant barrier. So it's wonderful that you're helping to resolve that barrier. I want to just, as we're getting close to the end of our conversation this morning, just want to again encourage anyone that's here with us today, if they have questions, to go ahead and populate that in the chat. Frank, I want to come back to you. If someone today is on this call and they're thinking, gosh, I'd really like to sit down with Frank and learn a little bit more about getting started and what this relationship is like and how it could be, what would you encourage a business person on this call to do first?
I would ensure that your corporate team understands the dynamic that'll occur at your facility. If you have a structure such as we do, with being a plant where our corporate office is located in another state. But I would just say getting prepared for the different types of trainings that you would have to do, because it's not your traditional type of recruiting. it's a little different. And as I mentioned earlier, we've taken a tiered approach, and it wasn't, let's just bring all these individuals in. And working with Tara and Tariq, it actually helped us improve some of the things that we do from a talent and acquisition process, as well as how do we reduce that time from onboard, from application to hire, to get those individuals in our facility as quickly as possible. So it's setting your team up really so that they understand directionally, the direction that you're going and what is going to be needed to make those individuals successful.
Yeah. And you just identified something that I'm hearing a lot right now is trying to shorten that time, right? Especially in this really tight labor market of, from application to interviewing to offer to onboarding, getting that tighter is something that I think we all could benefit from as we're recruiting and bringing new associates to our team.
Specifically in our market, with the growth that we have realized and the additional growth that's coming, that's very critical to be successful, because there's a lot of different options in the marketplace right now.
Yeah, for sure. Tara, from your perspective, someone on the call today wants to create a relationship with you and with CRIS, other than just reaching out, an email or phone call, what are some of the things that they should be asking and inquiring about?
It's mostly about, like what Frank mentioned repeatedly, it's about longevity. It's not just simply getting people to your door, right? I really want to incorporate this program into my workforce. I think that thought has to happen there. If it is like just like a temporary kind of thing, we are available, but that stays temporary, right? It does not go beyond that. So be prepared, like Frank mentioned already, with your team, like you are introducing a new workforce, and I think the easier way to start that conversation in your location could be like, everybody is burning out right now because of long hours, overtime. That's as much as we visit workplace. That's a common statement that we hear, right, from every employer. We do not have enough people. We have to put people through overtime, extra hours. So it's a change. You're really looking towards a change, right, that you are going to accept and incorporate. But that change is going to give you a good outcome, a long-term solution to help everybody. This, if again, in Frank's taking Frank's example, like if there is a shortage of 10 people in a shift, what happens? Everybody has to work extra hours now. Maybe have to come another day to work overtime, right? That could be a quality time with your family that you need to spend. So it helps everybody. It helps everybody, every individual employee, the employer in a bigger picture. It helps these new American workforce, because they get the opportunity to work and integrate in the workplace. And that's the thing too, we didn't talk earlier. Integration is a thing we look at from the very beginning. And the integration process is smoother and quicker at the workplace, right, than anywhere else. People go to shopping in the weekend, and where do they go? Nepalis go all to this Nepali restaurant, and there are grocery stores owned by Nepali team, right? And they go there. And do you think that they would have the opportunity to speak in English when they go to a Nepali restaurant or a Nepali grocery store? No, right? But they, at the workplace, they have to speak in English, right? So that's how it is. You guys may not be thinking about that, but you are doing way more than giving somebody a job. You're really giving them that integration piece. You're really giving them that self-sufficiency piece. You're really giving them a home. People are buying home like crazy in the community, and you will get that later from their bank or anything like that, right? For the loan processing, like as an employer, can you please sign that, right? So these are beyond the job that we're talking about, that and you as an employer is enriching these families and communities.
Thanks for that, Tara. I love that idea of like, this is a long-term, strategy. This is a long-term, business proposition for employers to put in place, as well as this providing this integration into not just the world of work, but into the greater community. Tariq, what are your thoughts?
So just coming back to what agencies Tara was talking about, what CRIS does, what Jewish Family Services does, it is, yes, we do have a refugee program that is geared towards that specific population. We also have another program that, just to give you a perspective also, refugees are 5 years after the fact they become US citizen. Just because they became US citizen, our services doesn't stop. We still recruit, we still engage with the community. So both Tara and I have programs beyond the refugee status of becoming, after they become US citizens. So definitely Jewish Family Services has that. We do have these are new refugees, but we also have our survivors of Nazi persecution, for example. And we're always looking for volunteers to take care of that population. And that's another way for you or your company to engage in not only the refugee population, but those who have suffered beyond that. We do have professional, someone like you in a level where your executive level or your HR level and so forth, and lost your job, how to brand and how to market and how to move to that networking facility. We also have professional services and beyond many of that. So there's many ways to engage with us, not through just the refugee lens, but also to many ways that you can engage with to find executives, to find high level positions that you're offering. Also, you can engage with us. We can help you recruit for that as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you, all three of you, Tara, Tariq, and Frank, for this great conversation this morning. Thank you to all of you who joined us. I'm a little sad that our three-part series is coming to an end, but I know that we'll continue to have these collaborations and continue to share the great work that CRIS, Jewish Family Services, and chamber members like Frank at NiSource Bergen are doing with the rest of our chamber membership. I really want to give a special thank you to NiSource Foundation and Columbia Gas of Ohio for their generous support and bringing this educational series to our chamber members. And just a reminder that our second part of our annual meeting, ADAPT, is coming up on August 25th at Huntington Park. Please join us. We'll be meeting and networking in person outside and having great conversation and just getting to know one another better. Tariq, Tara, Frank, thank you all so very much. Everyone stay safe and be well, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye now.